Today's topic is about India's logistics sector, and this is not one particular article. We are looking at the entire logistics sector as a theme, and I'm collating points from multiple articles, and we will be looking at this theme, the overall 360-degree view of this topic. So today's theme is about the logistics sector, and this is like a 360-degree view on the topic. Now, let's understand the relevance of this topic in the context of our economy. See, in GDP, which is a formula for measuring our economic growth, okay, for every aspect of this component, you will be having a link to the logistics. If you want to increase consumption, timeliness of goods delivery is important for your consumption, right? Let's say you order something on Amazon, and if it doesn't reach you on time, would you be requiring that product? Would you be willing to pay for that product? No. And if you want that product on time, you have to invest in logistics. A complete supply chain should be established so that the competitiveness of the market is handled. Similarly, you need to have infrastructure support from the government, so government should also be spending its own money to help the private players. And then there is this trade component, exports minus imports. So if we want to improve our export competitiveness, even in that case, logistics become very important. See, we are trying to emulate the China model, that is export-led growth. For that objective also, you require logistics. Clear? So this is the context as to why logistics will become the backbone of our economy. Okay, so this is the premise of the entire theme that we're discussing. And if you take a look at the policy documents of how our logistics sector should be like, the goal is to travel towards a 32 trillion economy by 2047. Is this too much of an ambition? Let's see. First of all, let's understand what is logistics. There are mainly three components of what logistics is all about, and at the heart of that three components is the element of efficiency. Firstly, you need to plan how to send those goods on time. Where will you store them? From the source to the consumer, the entire supply chain. So this is the most important takeaway. Supply chain planning. You need to have a clear-cut understanding of the supply chain. Where is the product originating, and at what time is it reaching the consumer? At every stage, we need to reduce our time. Only then we will have, use this keyword, trade competitiveness. Okay. Where is this topic relevant? If you take a look at your syllabus, in UPSC syllabus, you will see the notification, right? In that, you will see infrastructure, investment models, inclusive growth. How is it linked to each of these components? Infrastructure, because I have already explained, the core of logistics is to have the relevant infrastructure. Then, if you want to build that infrastructure, you need to collaborate with private sector players. Concepts like public-private partnership, PPP models will come into the picture here. Then you have inclusive growth. How inclusive growth? Because if you have necessary infrastructure, you will be connecting different parts of the country. Regional growth, regional imbalance, you can connect it to GS1, Indian society. Regionalism as a problem. So if you have a policy which tries to create a scenario where it becomes mandatory for regional planning, then you will integrate the country. Even the unconnected parts of this country will become part of the economic growth story, and therefore inclusive growth will happen. For that also, logistics sector is very important. Okay. Finally, if you strictly talk from a competitive edge standpoint, if India has to compete with countries like Vietnam, there is a present scenario where there is a strategy called China plus one strategy. This will be dealt in international relations, but briefly if I have to explain. China grew from 1970s, from 1975, somewhere around that time. Economic growth story of China is dependent on how it became the factory of the world. it was like the cheapest production center for almost every goods that you can think of. It delivered the goods by reverse engineering. It started with very low level manufacturing, and as it progressed and invested in its R&D, China's growth story is phenomenal because it is outcompeting China in some sectors now. Sorry, US in some sectors now. If India has to emulate that model, or if India has to learn some lessons, we're already lagging behind. If India has to learn, logistics sector becomes very important for gaining that competitive edge. And in the context of the China plus one strategy, after the COVID pandemic, the world recognized that it is over depending on China and wanted to diversify its supply chain. Let's say, for example, if all the factories of a product like, let's say, Apple outsources a large part of its manufacturing and assembling to company like, let's say, for example, Foxconn. It's a third party which manufactures Apple's components, assembles them, and sends it, ships it back to US and other parts of the world. It was there in China. So after the pandemic, Apple realized that if I am depending heavily on China, any geopolitical risks, so let's say for example, take the present tariff war. The president of United States, Donald Trump, is imposing a lot of tariffs, which makes iPhone very expensive in US alone. Trump wants the manufacturing base to shift from China back to the US, which is very expensive. So when there are geopolitical risks, it's not possible for a country like, you know, for a company like Apple to shift the base entirely from China, right? Because it established a lot of factories there, like a lot of infrastructure there. Suddenly you can't shift it, right? Like it's very expensive. So the companies now want to move some parts of the manufacturing processes to a country where the labor is relatively cheap. Let's say a country like Philippines or Taiwan. And if India wants to occupy that plus one space where a part of the manufacturing is taken away from China and India wants to capture it, even in that case, we will gain a competitive edge. So, in the evolution of the geopolitical strategies and how the world is moving towards a trend of uh, deglobalization, meaning before this phase, there was globalization, there was free movement of people and ideas and technologies, money, everything. But with the growth of population across the world, the resources are getting constrained, and it is becoming difficult for many governments across the world to create new jobs. This hyper nationalism, meaning, let's say for example, let's make America great again campaign is all about trying to bring back jobs of the Americans back to America from China to America. But it's not possible for companies like Apple because it's very expensive to pay uh, money for the labor cost there. The very reason why China succeeded is because of its cheap labor, efficient technology, and processes. If you want the same kind of environment for a company like Apple in China, sorry, US, it's very expensive. So, in this kind of challenging environment, how do we handle? This is the question that is, you know, um, bothering a lot of international companies, MNCs. And if India wants to provide an opportunity for companies like Apple, we need to have a clear-cut logistics policy. Even in that scenario, this topic is extremely important. Clear? Now, what is the viewpoint you need to have when you're thinking about this logistics sector? See, what is logistics in short? The infrastructure that you need to bring a product from the stage of production, the final product, to the consumer, the entire supply chain, whatever methods, transport mechanisms, storages, inventories, everything, all of that, the planning that goes behind, the nitty gritties, everything will form the aspect of logistics. See, if you as in the nation wants to really outcompete other players like Philippines or Taiwan, or let's say in the case of textiles, Bangladesh, where very cheap labor is available, India has risen in the value chain. What does it mean? At one point of time, the cost of labor in India was very cheap. For example, making textile garments, we had the ability to compete with nations like Bangladesh. But India's economic standards rose. Governments are giving more money. They're putting more money into the hands of the people through some sort of a welfare scheme or the other. So, cost of labor also has risen. Let's say, for example, in a place like Pondicherry, sorry, Coimbatore, there is a place called Tirupur. Okay, Okay, in that place you will see many cotton textile garment hubs where there are brands like Peter England, Pan America. The cost of producing shirts is very low. Maybe if that shirt is sold for 700 rupees, cost of manufacturing and the labor would have been not more than 100 rupees. So that cost is rising because the cost of labor is also rising. As India's economic growth is improving, the rate of growth is improving, people would obviously expect more salary. We are okay to give more salary, but that will make our end product much less, affordable for the global markets, because the same product is still delivered by country like Bangladesh, which has some competitive advantage, because Bangladesh is considered a underdeveloped country, so it will have some additional advantages from um, World Bank, WTO, etc., etc. Like there are, how do I put it? Like there are welfare mechanisms globally also, which is a completely different topic. But in short, I'm explaining. So they will have subsidies. Subsidies are still WTO compliant for development sake. When we deal with the topic, I'll explain in detail. But just giving a context. So it will become difficult for a country like India to compete with them. So the only way we will become better is by reducing the wastage in our supply chain. Efficiency. We have to figure out ways to make the processes more efficient so that our cost comes down. That is the way in which we have to go forward. So what is the traditional focus? We were continuously focusing on increasing our manufacturing capacity. But if you produce more and there are no people to buy, it will lead to a disaster, a colossal disaster. So you need to move away from this traditional focus and focus on complete end objective. So from this to this, shift your focus. So when you're writing your answers in mains, this focus should be clearly visible. There should be a contrast before, after. The evolution shows your maturity. Before, the focus was on manufacturing capacity. For example, Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. If you're producing for India, it's fine. But how much demand will we have for a particular product? Let's say, for example, you take the case of TV. Just because you have more money, you will not buy more televisions, right? You will still have to manufacture them and compete and send it across the globe. Make products that are so desirable that we can compete with the global markets. That should be our end objective. Just producing them is not enough. We have to make that product reach the customer on time at a low cost. Otherwise, people won't buy it. Let's say a TV costs 10,000 rupees and the shipping cost for that is another 5,000 rupees, where probably China would be sending it in 1,000 rupees only. Whose TV will be sold? Obviously China's. So that's the point of focus here. Clear? We have to move away from manufacturing capacity to looking at trade as a production capacity plus timely delivery. For this timely delivery, logistics is extremely important. Okay. Another viewpoint traditionally is production volume. We have to produce more. We have to produce more. What will happen if we produce more and there is no market? There's no one to buy. To fix that, we have to make the movement of goods, the logistics, cost effective. This is our desire. So understand and showcase this contrast in your answers very clearly by using these keywords. Clear? The third aspect is product quality. I'm not saying that these aspects are not important. They're important, but without having logistics, it's futile. You make a great product, okay? But the logistics capacity to handle it safely is so poor that it reaches in a broken stage. Of what use is of your quality? So reliability of how you deliver the product is contingent or dependent on how efficient your logistics sector is. And that is critical for global competitiveness. Did you understand the need for logistics? Clear? Use these keywords and project them in your answers. See, you are just having 150 words and 250 words in your exam. If you don't know what keyword to use, you will be explaining the same thing in elaborate manner, which will increase your reaction time and you will not be able to complete your answers. Yeah, of course. Dependencies. See, okay, I got your doubt. He's asking, the question is, if you are building a good logistics sector, that's not enough. Don't look at any topic in economy in isolation. Don't look at any topic in silos. There is, of course, a story behind this, a story after this. You make a great product. You have a very good logistics sector, but there is no global demand. Still a problem. There is a global demand. You have a great logistics sector, but there is no raw material available. Still a problem. So, our foreign relations, diplomacy, our efficiency, domestic capacity to produce them, internal politics, all of them play a role in how efficiently we can grow. So, there needs to be a structured, coordinated approach in all the areas. But right now, on this theme, we are assuming that other parts are doing their job. That is a different issue. I'm never questioning that. That is not important. We're only looking at this logistics sector as a as a sector, as a theme, and we are looking at the problems in that sector and how to fix them. Never ever are we going to say that this sector cannot depend on other sectors. All of them should work together. So even in this issue, you will see as we move forward how the solutions are never just about policy, just about governance. It is about technology, it is about economy, it is about cooperative federalism, it is about diplomacy. All of them should work together to bring out the efficiency that we are expecting. It's clear? Now, so for this, we have something called the National Logistics Policy. See, whenever you are looking at policy statements of a particular theme in GS3, it will not focus on other areas like geopolitics, etc., completely. And of course, it will have an element of trying to fix that part. But the policy document, when it is being prepared by those respective ministries, is about bringing efficiency within the sector most of the times. And that is the focus of your answers primarily in GS3. The subject focus of GS3 should primarily be about how to work on the economic aspects, how to make sure that the outcomes of that sector are optimized. Of course, in your answers, after this core GS3 part is addressed, then you can also address that this is not the only thing that is required. We have to look at the policy governance aspect, international relations, society, jobs, whatever. But address the core aspects first, and then only you can come to the secondary aspects. Similarly, if you're talking about this topic in governance, you should first focus on governance aspects, the polity angle, the cooperative federalism, policy lapses, governance lapses, ease of doing business, how it is becoming difficult due to red tapeism, corruption, bureaucratic inefficiency. That should be the focus there. So, depending on the paper in which you are writing this, bring that aspect forward and push the other aspects back. If you are looking at the same topic in GS1, you talk about regional inefficiencies, geography angle. You talk about the social inequalities making access difficult, society angle. You talk about the historical disadvantages because some regions were subjected to colonial history, and therefore that culture has continued, and it was exacerbated by other aspects like GS2, bureaucratic inefficiencies, corruption, red tapeism. Same points, but the focus of your answers, the priority in which you write those points, differ from paper to paper, and that's the way you present your answers. Same topic, but the focus changes because you only have 150 words. Contextual introduction, contextual answering of a topic becomes all the more important. But while you are preparing, you don't prepare GS1, GS2, GS3 separately on a theme. You prepare the issue holistically. Answer writing becomes important because you will develop the skill to react in a short span of time and ensure that topic is presented in the context of that paper. Clear? Now, let's come back to the National Logistics Policy 2022, which is trying to fix the logistics sector problems. Firstly, what is the vision? It tries to reduce logistics cost from 14% of GDP to 8% of GDP by 2030. See, usually UPSC does not expect you to remember numbers, especially for prelims. But when you are looking at policy documents, it is important to remember what is the global benchmark, because in answer writing, if you have to prove a point, you need to show that through data, facts, and policy targets. If you don't know what is it that you're setting out to achieve, why you are doing that, answers will not have clarity. We are saying that we have to reduce from our present 14% of the cost to 8% of GDP, because 8% is the cost incurred by other countries. If we want to stay ahead of the global average, this is the target we have to reach, at least. See, we can't possibly produce goods and achieve to bring down this logistic cost maybe to 5%. That's way too ambitious, because even the most efficient countries are not able to do it. But if we are not able to do that, at least match up with them, right? 8% is the cost incurred by other competitors. So let's try to achieve that first. And within a specific time period, a policy document will always have a metric and a time period for that to achieve. So this is the objective. The policy document then goes on to discuss how to do it. So the strategy that this policy document says is that we have to leverage technology, digital integration. Because what are the different aspects of a logistics sector? You have airports, you have roadways, you have railways, you have waterways. All these multi-modal transport systems require coordination right from the stage of construction to integration in terms of planning, and that should be accessible to companies who are involved in this logistic delivery. For example, you have this delivery or DTDC, Blue Dart, all these courier companies, right? They are part of this delivery of goods. If you take a look at their annual reports or the usual complaints that they face, you will get to understand the entire set of issues in the logistics sector. And when you're reading infrastructure topic, each of these air, road, rail, waterways, they are a standalone topic in themselves. Airports have overcapacities, governance issues in every aspect of logistics. They are a standalone issue. So if you take a matrix and look at air as a topic, this will have a separate document. This will have a separate issue. This will have a separate issue. Waterways will have a separate issue. Each of them can be a standalone topic, standalone question in itself. But we are not getting there. We will talk about this in infrastructure topic, but when it comes to logistics, it is important that, let's say we are assuming that everything is fine. It is not enough. To optimize and reduce the cost, we have to integrate them digitally, because that is the fastest way to do it. Let's say you have a platform where everything is interlinked. I can book, if you are a logistics company, I'm just giving a hypothetical example. You can book a train, a roadway, a railway, waterway, all those multi-modal transport systems at the click of a button, and let AI optimize the cost and the time period. It will plan for yourself. Don't you think it's a great idea? That's how we'll reduce the time and the costs involved. So for that, we need a unified system where all these departments, all these ministries come together, coordinate, and create systems so that planning becomes easier. For example, you have UPI. How are you able to send money which is there in your state bank to another bank, let's say HDFC? There is a common platform which is created by a company that is represented by the government, NPCI. It's not completely a government company, but still there is a technology layer. There is a way in which that entire tech stack is arranged so that HDFC and SBI can seamlessly work together for transfer of money. Similarly, if there is a common protocol, there is a technology layer where railways, roadways, waterways, all these respective departments and the stakeholders can come together on a single platform, like a UPI kind of a thing. That tech stack can be used for planning and integrating the entire logistics sector at the click of a button, like something like UPI. That is the kind of digital India we want to make sure that the cost is coming down. Clear? So this is the digital integration layer that the policy talks about. So any technology that comes to help you and figure out how to reduce the cost can be an example in your answer. Whenever in the future you look at a technology, for example, RFID. Okay, there is this toll system, right? Where at the toll gate you are not waiting. The RFID that is attached to your vehicle itself will get detected because it is connected to a wallet. You don't have to wait. That's a very important step. There is reduction of corruption. There is ensuring that we have data on how the goods are moving so that we can plan better. So that is the kind of digital integration we're talking about. But for all of this to happen, we'll need to have infrastructure, right? Clear? So infrastructure will come at a capex, that is the capital expenditure aspect. So we need to invest in, the government needs to move money away from subsidies and freebies and invest in capex, that is capital expenditure, which will create further jobs and empower the reduction of costs in logistics sector. We need to invest in multi-modal planning and infrastructure. This is what the policy document says. And finally, we need to focus on skill development, because at every stage, we need skilled professionals to handle the job efficiently. Whether you are in railways, roadways, construction, government, everywhere, human resource aspect becomes all the more important. That is why you will see, for a job to be done, it is not just the policy does not just address one aspect. It should address the governance, it should address the funds. There is a 3F approach for governance. For any job to be done efficiently, you need funds, functions, and functionaries. Funds means money. Functions means the power and the laws which are streamlined to get that funds. And finally, the functionaries, which is skilled professionals to use that money efficiently. So this is what skill development talks about. The entire policy document is about this. Next up, you have something called the PM Gatishki for the same reason. There is a PM Gatishki master plan, which is like a web portal, okay, which is a GIS based web portal, okay. So simply put, you can switch on your location tracker, okay. I'm just giving oversimplified scenario. You can switch on your GPS location tracker and it will help you plan for your logistics better by coordinating with different departments and connecting them on a single portal, so that the government agencies can plan better. I've already explained one scenario, completely unrelated, but you can probably understand this topic better. A few days ago on the road was dug because there was a drainage problem. One department is handling that problem. It repaired the drainage, laid the road, covered it. Few days later, another department comes, again digs the road, because there was some pipeline issue, or let's say they want to lay down some cables, etc. What if there is a portal which will clearly facilitate that engagement between the two departments? You can reduce the cost of digging the road twice and laying the road again. That will reduce the cost involved. So that is what, in an oversimplified scenario, I've just given one example. Gatishki portal is like that for the infrastructure sector, so that you can plan your activities better. So there is this GIS integration, then 16 ministries are involved in this, which will facilitate a holistic approach. Like the silos approach that we were talking about will be stopped because of this, and therefore there is a real-time project monitoring and real-time tracking of implementation of these projects. This is the PM Gatishki. You need to use this in your answers, because that is what the government intervention is all about. If you're not quoting this answer and you're not able to project the latest data as to what is the progress on this, you're not going to get marks. Next up, other technologies or other initiatives by the government is about this ULIP. It's like a unified logistics portal where you are integrating many logistic systems are there. 30 plus logistic systems. Let's say, for example, different departments have different components for this transportation. All of them will be brought onto a common platform. Then you have technologies where your logistics ranking will be improved because of this. World Bank comes up with a logistics performance indicator. Okay, so all the activities taken on the technology front to improve that ranking shall also be mentioned in your answers. Then you have IceGate, which is the customs portal. While you are there is a concept called trade facilitation. While you are importing, okay, while you're importing the products, there is a person who will take care of the necessary documentation. He's called the customs house agent, CHA. Okay, so there is a lot of inefficiency on how we handle our ports. For example, some product comes in a ship to a port in, let's say, Mumbai. The time taken for bringing that product out from the ship, from the container. So it's not like only one product is coming. There are multiple products from multiple places in multiple containers. The time taken for bringing that product out from that ship to the port and finally to load it into a lorry or truck and taking to your warehouse, the time taken is so high that it increases the cost, because every time that happens, you will also have to pay the you'll also have to pay the rent for your inventory, for your warehouses. The product is taken out of the ship and stored in a warehouse, but you stand in a line with a token and it will take so much time that the cost of that warehouse will also be incurred, right? That is the reason why from 8% till 14% we have a increase in cost, one of that component. So IceGate is that digitization initiative of the customs, so that there is better planning and it reduces the time for bringing the product out of the port to the consumer. You need to mention this kind of initiatives also. Your answers in GS3 are supposed to be driven by data pointers, examples, initiatives. In the absence of those initiatives, it is difficult for you to score marks. Next up, what are the infrastructure projects taken up? You have to mention all of this. As such, infrastructure is a separate topic, but you have to integrate, at least mention the initiatives taken up by the government when you're talking about logistics sector. Sagarmala is about, let's say, this is the port-led growth. Let's say, for example, Chennai. This is the this is Chennai. Okay. At this port, you need to develop more capacity. Let's say we are having the ability to only handle 2 ships, for example. We need to build more infrastructure to handle 4 ships. That is not enough. You need to connect it with highways. You need to connect it with railways. You need to connect it with inland waterways. And all of this are different projects in themselves. Ministry of Shipping will handle Sagarmala. Road Ministry will probably, be dealing with the shipping ministry to create this highway corridors and bridges which will connect these economic hubs. For example, take Chennai. In Nellore, we have something called City City, which is like a manufacturing zone. Once you have that manufactured product, all the facilities required for manufacturing are there in that specialized city near Nellore. Take that product out of that place, ship it to Chennai, and send it across efficiently. For that, you need to have good roads. If you don't want to send it through road and you want to reduce your cost because the volume is so high, you need to have dedicated freight corridors, that is railways. See, goods trains are always given second priority. They're always late. That is one thing that we have to focus on. If we have a railway track which is exclusively for this freight movement, that will reduce the time period. We don't have that right now. We have to build that infrastructure. And inland waterways. Usually we don't focus on inland waterways. Most of our transport is through trucks because it is easy. It is easy to lay roads than create waterways and create the infrastructure. But inland waterways is environmental friendly. The cost of this project is initially high, but the return is so good that one, we can move bulk goods at a very low cost. That is the first advantage. And second, it's environment friendly. It will not be as polluting as roadways. I'm just giving you an example of wherever it is feasible. This example may not be, see, we don't have a river per se between Nellore and Chennai. I'm just giving you an example wherever it is possible. Even then we are not using it. Next up, we have to understand the policy dimension, the legal framework. For every aspect of the infrastructure, for example, roadways, you have the Motor Vehicle Act. There are inefficiencies in that. That can be a standalone question. Railways Act, that can be a standalone question. Customs Act, another question. National Logistic Policy Integration, that can be another question. So I'm just talking about how different questions can be asked, or one point, depending on the context, can be picked and we can write about that. See, Motor Vehicle Act is not just about logistics. Maybe one point in that can be relevant for our logistics. But if you can try to cull that out and put it in your answer, it can help you. You have something called the National Rail Plan. There is a question in prelims also recently. There are multiple times when I posted on the Telegram channel about Vivek Debroy Committee, National Rail Plan 2030. Time and again I've focused on how Kavach, which is a technology meant for reducing the accident, should be integrated into our railway network, made mainstream, how it should be made better, how we have to improve the efficiency and increase the number of our officers, now which is IRMS. All this were discussed in the Vivek Debroy plan. He was the advisor for the Prime Minister Economic Council also. He recently passed away. He was a luminary who contributed a lot to the railways, not just railways, the overall economic growth of this country through his policies. You'll have to know all those plans. So this is how you have to prepare your notes. This is how you have to prepare your short notes and develop the ability through practice to pick up points which are relevant for our sector. If the question is asking just about logistics sector, this framework is good enough. But if it is about railways, make this the central point, but make sure that it contributes to logistics sector. You have to definitely mention logistics. So logistics can be the main question in this. But if the question is about railways, focus more on railways, and one of the point will be logistics. In any of the question given on these individual items, logistics will definitely be 1 point. In any of the logistics questions, all of this will be 1 point. That is how you have to change and switch, which comes through practice. But you have to prepare the issue holistically. Once you understand, your ability to recall in a shortest possible time will decide how you write your answers. That comes with practice. But for that, the thought process should be fixed, right? This is what I'm saying. Now, we are moving this discussion to the international relations. If you want to talk about IR and bring logistics as a point in one of that, one line only, we are having an elaborate discussion on this entire issue so that you are able to link geopolitics with logistics, one line at max in your answer. That is the kind of preparation that goes into understanding an issue. If you are writing about, let's say, any policy, for example, India-China strategy, one of the main point in that is how China is a threat in Indian Ocean, which is a strategic backyard. You have to use keywords like this from MEA, that is Ministry of External Affairs, policy documents, strategic backyard. China is a threat in Indian Ocean, which is a strategic backyard, which has important lanes of sea communication, where shipping corridors are there. So in ensuring there is an efficiency of those shipping corridors without any threat for our strategic autonomy, we have to bring in that element of diplomacy also into our planning for safety and link it to China +1 strategy, because ultimately logistics is a economic topic. Bring in that GS2 angle, but connect it back to why it is important in international relations, because of the economic angle. Why? Because of China +1 strategy, manufacturing interrelation, and therefore why it is a strategic weapon. How you can look at logistics as a competitive advantage. That is what China had, right? Why is China so hell-bent on One Belt, One Road initiative? Is it not logistics? That's what you should understand. Now, what are the strengths India has? Firstly, over a period of time, we are increasing our investments into the infrastructure sector. We have a national infrastructure plan. So in the 5-year period, we are planning to invest, we planned and invested somewhere around 11 lakh crores. So we don't have the updated data yet on what is the status of this. If you come across any articles on this, please keep a watch. We improved our port efficiency because of the initiatives taken by connecting the special economic zones. For example, I told you, what is a special economic zone? For example, there is something called Sri City in Nellore. This area is having tax incentives, production facilities, land, cheap labor, everything that you need for increasing the production capacity. But that production capacity is not enough to become trade competitive. We have to reduce our turnaround times, and that is how we achieved it through Sagarmala project. Because we are improving the port facilities and integrating it with the special economic zones, it is reducing our turnaround time. That is what we have to write. Then last mile service delivery, the growth of internet in our country, cheap internet, is coupled with the development of the e-commerce industry. Today, even the remotest of villages are able to access some goods, if not just on par with cities, but it's much better than what it was a decade ago, thanks to the e-commerce revolution, the digital revolution. Now, let's understand the problems. Majority of the problem comes from our dependence on roads which are congested, polluting, costly. That's why we need to take the share of goods that are moving through roads away from roads to railways, waterways, and airways. That will reduce. Say, for example, there is a regulatory approval cause which is leading to 20 to 25% delays. The reason why people want to move on roads despite being costly is because the other areas it is difficult to get a spot on a goods train and it is delayed. We have to fix those issues. So, what will happen if we focus and improve all this? What will be the impact? World Bank says that we will have 15% growth rate in the next few decades. This is given by World Bank. You have to quote the source, quote the number to authenticate your argument. Then World Trade Organization said that we can reduce the cost by 14.3% if we focus on digital trade facilitation. Simple documentation should be digitized. The waiting time, etc., will be reduced by 14.3% according to WTO. Quote these official numbers in your answers. Then you have the scope for 22 million jobs in the next few decades if you focus on logistics sector job creation. It can be supply chain professionals, IT professionals, manual labor, skilled professionals in trade facilitation, running infrastructure, railways, waterways, ports, everything. Together as a sector, it has a potential of 22 million jobs. And this number should be, if I'm not wrong, from Niti Aayog or maybe from other report. Take a look at the reports when you're reading the article and quote them. It can be either from Niti Aayog, World Bank, but Indian numbers are mostly from Indian reports, usually from Niti Aayog or any ministry report or budget speeches. You can quote them or economic survey for that matter. One case study that you can use as a global example for making your answers better is the UAE model, which tried to ramp up its logistics sector and contributed to nearly 10% of GDP growth. What did they do? How did they do? That can be a case study for India to showcase in your answers. This is considered to be a benchmark for emerging economies. Now, please remember, when you're writing mains, you will not have time for such lengthy PhDs on UAE logistics sector. Don't go to the micro level. This is picked up from Financial Express article which came a few days ago. Just take that and use it directly. Say that you have to follow UAE economic model. If you have time, break it down. But if you don't have time, at least it is better than nothing. So just move on. Always optimize your effort for the time taken to cover the topic. Today we are completing the entire topic of logistics in under 45 minutes. That's a huge ROI. If you sat down to prepare this topic yourself, you will not take less than one complete day to collate this article and internalize it. So use these classes to reduce the time and internalize the topic rather than just trying to read more and more. Focus the time on answer writing. Now, there is something called a new strategy called just-in-time manufacturing. This can also be quoted in your answers. What happens? This is all the more relevant in sectors like electronics, textiles, perishables, where the business that these sectors get is contingent on the timely delivery. So just-in-time manufacturing strategy is supposed to be used. It's a very specific keyword. If there is any question on how do we improve the electronics sector in India or how do we improve the textile manufacturing, in that one of the point can be about how we can improve the logistics efficiency through just-in-time manufacturing. Just one point. By using this keyword, you will be communicating a lot of ideas to the examiner because you only have 150 words. When these sectors, these themes are asked, focus on this just-in-time manufacturing as a strategy. What are the infrastructure reform priorities? If I have to sum up, firstly, we need dedicated freight corridors for India where goods trains have separate tracks. Then you have inland waterways because it's cost effective. Co-located facilities, meaning you need to have logistic parks where manufacturing hubs are very near. At the same place, you have, docks, roadways, railways, everything integrated. So this is an AI generated image of how a futuristic model will be there. Just I wanted AI to just visualize it, how it will look like. It may not have been the best possible picture, but this is what it is. So this multi-modal logistic parks within the SEZ areas will reduce the cost even further. Okay. Now next up, how do we make the existing initiatives better? We have to expand the reach by integrating data analytics and logistic systems. You have to improve the rankings and enforce extended RFID tracking for all the container movements. Right now they're still done manually, make it mandatory. Implement AI based customs clearance in IceGate. What is this IceGate? Do some research. You will try to get more information about it. Just understand, take a look at the IceGate portal. You will get how it is important in trade facilitation, how AI can automate a lot of procedures here. Next up is workforce development, which is important. These are some of the targets, etc. You can just note them down. Okay. ESG means environment, social, governance related focus. Okay. It's all about sustainability. Any company should have social responsibility, and the biggest social responsibility that companies have right now is to take care of the environment, and also the environmental strategy should be in tune with the governance needs. You need to use digital tools like IoT sensors, blockchain. But remember, when you're quoting blockchain, be very practical. Blockchain is not something that is cost effective. It's an overkill because the electricity needs are very high for blockchain. Don't just write blockchain everywhere. Okay. So these are some of the skills where we have to make our workforce better. Finally, we have to integrate MSMEs. See, why MSMEs? Because MSMEs create the largest number of jobs in our country, and they're not supported as of now. Logistics sector can empower the MSMEs because these are the challenges faced, whichever we discussed. Let's say small companies, if you have an agglomeration of them, they can combine together, share the logistic cost, and demand aggregation can actually help them. So there should be a digital technology for this entire demand aggregation. You have something called ONDC, which is like a Amazon like marketplace created by the government, a tech stack. So if you have ONDC, you will be solving the limited tech access because it is very expensive to market your product on marketplaces like Amazon or Flipkart. ONDC is that democratizing platform which will empower MSMEs. Next up is the e-marketplace for logistics. We have to create one such platform and integrate with ONDC. Okay. You have this. See, MSMEs can also be having this problem of credit. There is something called OCEN, Open Credit Enablement Network. Integrated with ONDC, that can also be a solution. Okay. So this will give a phenomenon called Uberization, where you are aggregating the companies. Let's say, for example, what did Uber or Ola do? They created an aggregator model where all the cabs are brought onto a platform. You connect the riders and cab owners or taxi owners, and they charge a fee for that. So if you can create a shared aggregator model like that, it will bring down the cost. This is what you can do. So these are some of the prelims concepts that you can think. Whatever we discussed, same things from that article. Okay, so finally the conclusion can be something like this. Logistics is India's circulatory system. What do you mean by circulatory system? In our body? Blood. It's like the lifeline of Indian economy. You can use words like this. It can be a strategic compass for Vikasit Bharat by 2047. This is the ready-made conclusion that you can use in your answers. So this is how you prepare an entire topic as a thought process. Condense it, repeat the keywords through multiple revisions, write answers, your topic is over. Clear? So that's it for today. We'll meet in tomorrow's class. Bye.